15 months ago, Secretary Kerry said that we could reach a deal with Iran in 3 to 6 months. What's happened?
I think, Senator, what's happened is that we've had, as you know, these very intense negotiations, multiple rounds of negotiations. In the course of those negotiations, this is incredibly, as you know, incredibly complex. And what's happened in the course of those negotiations is that on a number of issues, Iran has actually moved and gotten closer to where they need to be in order for us to make an agreement. In other areas, we haven't seen sufficient movement. Our judgment has been that this has progressed enough, that they've demonstrated enough seriousness of purpose to warrant continuing it. Meanwhile, the program has been frozen.
Secretary Kerry obviously miscalculated when he said 15 months ago that we could reach a deal in 3 to 6 months. What was the main miscalculation?
I don't think, Senator, there was a miscalculation. I think what we built in, as you know, to the interim agreement was the possibility of extending it. And the extension would be based on a determination that we made that we had made enough progress. We could see the possibility of getting to yes, but we simply needed more time to do that and to test the proposition. That's exactly where we are now.
Do you expect that you'll reach an agreement by March 24th?
I think the President said it was, how did he put it, less than 50-50?
If you don't reach an agreement by March 24th, will you walk away from the negotiations?
I think it depends entirely on exactly the details of where we are. So as I said earlier, for example, if we conclude by March 24th, the end of March, that we have not reached an agreement on the basic elements of a deal and that Iran is simply incapable or unwilling to get there, then yes, I think we'll have to conclude that this process needs to come to an end. If, on the other hand, we see that we have agreement on virtually all of the elements but not every single one, then we may take some more time. And indeed, remember, we have until June under the extension to see if we can get to yes. So I think it really depends on the details.
What possible action or lack of action by Iran could at this point cause the United States government to walk away from these negotiations?
I think two things, Senator. First, if there were gross violations of the interim agreement, that would be a serious cause. Second, if we come to the conclusion, based on these intensive ongoing negotiations, literally as we sit here, they're ongoing, that they're simply not going to get to yes, that they can't do it or they won't do it. That would cause us to say this process has come.
Was Iran's announcement that it's proceeding with 2 nuclear reactors a violation of the JPOA?
No, these are, as you know, it has a light water reactor at Bushehr. It is allowed to have light water reactors which are proliferation resistant. There is no violation under the interim agreement or under the UN Security Council resolution.
Is that, I mean, would you consider that a provocative, unhelpful act in the middle of sensitive negotiations?
Oh, sure. I think these kinds of announcements absolutely are trying to...
Would you consider the proceedings against Jason Rezaian, the Washington Post reporter, being held and ongoing, or during the middle of these ongoing negotiations, a provocative act?
Absolutely. Senator, the Americans who are detained illegally, erroneously, wrongly by Iran need to be released irrespective of these negotiations, whether they succeeded, including Jason Rezaian.
Consider the presence of a senior IRGC general with Hezbollah in Quneitra province on the edge of the Golan Heights a provocative act?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as you know, and as others have said, Iran does things every single day in many parts of the region and indeed beyond that are highly objectionable to us and to most of our partners and that go to our security, which is exactly why, even as we've been working on this deal, we have been extraordinarily vigilant in cracking down on their efforts to procure for their weapons of mass destruction program, cracking down on their support for terrorism, building up the capacity of our allies and partners in the region to defend themselves against Iranian aggression. Absolutely.
So why is it that Iran continuously undertakes needlessly provocative acts towards the United States and our partners, yet we're supposed to just simply look the other way while this Congress, considering legislation that clearly would not violate the JPOA, is supposed to consider the delicate sensibilities of so-called moderates in Tehran?
What we try to do, Senator, is in effect wall off the nuclear negotiations and try and see if we can reach an agreement. Because if we do, and again, as you said earlier. No, let me just emphasize this point if I could. If we do, and if we, as a practical matter, eliminate their ability to develop a nuclear weapon, that is actually, over time, going to make it a little bit less likely that the kinds of provocative actions that you rightly cite, they continue to take because they will not have the cover of that program to do it. So we believe that even in these other areas, there is a chance that an agreement makes us better off than we are today. But the
I
point
know
is,
that we've tried to wall off the nuclear negotiations. Iran has not. Ayatollah Khamenei has not. Qasem Soleimani
we've not
has
been sitting idly by. We continue to enforce vigorously the sanctions in all of these different areas, including the ones that are not part of the interim agreement. We continue to reinforce.
And in the meantime, Iran now controls or has dominant influence in 5 capitals in the Middle East.
So I think, you know, I'd be happy to have this discussion about where Iran is or where it isn't. But here's the thing. The people who are engaged in trying to negotiate this agreement, who, again, are not friendly to us, it's not that they like us, it's just that they're more pragmatic about where Iran needs to go if it's going to have a successful future.
Well, but why would they stop if they're getting everything in slow motion that they would like in an end deal anyway?
Because they have, as we discussed, they have internal politics that are incredibly challenging. And anything that we do that reinforces the hands of those who absolutely don't want to deal under any circumstances is going to weaken their hand and make it less likely that we get to an agreement that advances our own national security interests.
My time's expired, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Donald, Senator.